Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to dive into one of the important fundamental concepts in algorithms called recurrences. We are going to look at what are recurrences and recurrence relations. After that, we are going to look at some of the examples of recurrences. After that, we are going to look at different ways to solve these recurrences with a few examples. This is a long topic, so this will be divided into multiple shorter videos so that the understanding of the topic is clear. In this video, we are going to look at the very basic of what is a recurrence and the basic idea. So, what is a recurrence relation? Now, in programming, if you have a function which is recursive, and by recursive, I mean a function which calls itself, is called a recursive function. So then that function can be described by a recurrence relation. I think most of you who are watching today's video must be familiar with what is a recursive function. And if you are not familiar with what is a recursive function, maybe look on the internet um, and take some understanding on recursive function. So why do we need to write recursive functions? There are multiple reasons, and one of the important reasons of writing a recursive function is so that we can divide a bigger problem into smaller problems, then solve these smaller problems, find the solution to these subproblems, and then join these subproblems subproblems solution into a final solution. This is one of the reasons why we need recursive functions. There are more reasons, but to understand a recurrence relation, I think this is one of the important reasons to know why we need recursive functions. So let's take an example of a recursive function. Okay, so I am in VS Code and we are going to look at a very basic recursive function. I have a class and I added a function called a recursive function. Let's write some code here. If n is equal to 0, we are going to return. Now I am going to print the value of n, and after that I am going to call the same function with a value 1 less than the value of n. This is an example of recursive function. So what it is doing? It is doing two things. One, it is printing the value of n, and then it is calling itself with a value 1 less than n. It is going to run until the value of n is equal to 0. Now let's call it. So I am going to create an object, then call it, let's say for a value of 3. And I am going to add println so that every value is a new line. And now I am going to run the code. And if you see, we printed 3, 2, 1. But if you notice, how many times the function was called? 4 times. One for value 3, then for value 2, then for value 1, and then for value 0. This means for such a recursive function, if a value is n, the function is called n plus 1 times. So just keep this thing in mind. This is going to be used later when we dive a little deeper into recurrences and the recurrence relations. So if we see the last function which we saw in the VS Code IDE and how it is working. So at a high level, what happens is, for for n, what we are doing is, if n is equal to 0, return, otherwise print n, and then call the function again for n minus 1. Okay. Let's see what happens when we call this function. So maybe let's write on the side so that you can visualize it better. Let's say we are calling it for n is equal to, we enter the function, we print the value, print 3, and then next line what it does is call the function again for, function is entered again, the value is printed, and function is called again for a value of 1. Function is entered again, value is printed, and function is called again. And in the end, when the function is called again, it does nothing, it just returns. So how many times we call the function? When it is here, 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 and here, 4 times. This means we call the function n plus 1 time. So this is a very basic introduction to recurrences and recursive function. In the next video, we are going to look at how we can build a recurrence relation from such code which is recursive in nature. So thanks for watching. I will see you in our next lecture on recurrences.